Welcome to my budget deck channel where I try to make decks as cheap and playable as possible. So if this is something you'd be interested in, then why not subscribe? Starting off with Time Thief, a video from a long time ago that I had planned since basically the start of the game, but I never quite got the cards I wanted for it and I was never quite happy with it. But this is what I ended on, and it's not terrible. It's a fairly decent deck, and the main deck is very cheap. I made sure it is. So all you kind of need for the main deck is the Time Thief Winder. This card is in general very good, but I'll get to that in a second. You can see the extra deck is a bit more expensive, but not necessarily like crazy. And if you wanted a tiny bit cheaper, you can already see there's cards in here like ZEUS, which yes, in a rank 4 deck that doesn't have much more going on for itself. This card is insane, so if you have it, play it, but you don't really need this card. Like if you want to wait, see if you like Time Thieves, and you don't want to invest into this card, even though this card works for like most Xyz decks anyway, so it's not technically a bad investment, and even if it gets banned, you get the full refund anyway, since it's only a one-off. I would definitely advise to play this card, but you don't need to. And another thing you don't need to be playing is the Utopic Draco and Utopic Future combo. It just gives you another monster negate that is somewhat hard to get rid of, but there's also other kind of things you could be playing that I'll be talking about in a second. The rest of the extra deck though is it's kind of needed. Like you kind of need to play the Utopia double combo because that is how you close out games generally. You could technically keep on grinding, but if it's a rank 4 deck, then Utopia double is one of the stronger ones. And I think you can get Utopia in the structure deck as well, so technically by investing 500 gems, there's some stuff you can be getting with it. Let's start off first. Kagetokage, it's a nice card. It's a dark monster which comes in handy for specifically one thing. The problem with this card is you have to normal summon the level 4 monster. You cannot summon it otherwise because for some reason this card didn't want it to be, and that conflicts with Time Thief Regulator, because if you control no other monsters, you contribute this card and special summon to Time Thief's monsters. That's why I wanted to mainly only run it at 2. It's still a nice extender if you have it for the next turn, for example, then you join to a level 4, which you will be doing quite a lot in this deck. So you then can go into rank 4 again, but if you exactly have Time Thief Regulator and Kagetokage, then this kind of combo is not that great. That's why I would run it at a maximum of 1. Hat Tricker is different. Hat Tricker works kind of okay in the deck, but there's also a massive problem with Hat Tricker. Hat Tricker helps you go in second because then it's just basically a free body. Going first, it's neat to extend your plays, but it doesn't help you go into the original rank 4, which is a bit problematic from time to time. So this card can be bricky in your hand, but let's say you have a normal summon it, you can normal summon special summon Kagetokage then, and there's lots of things you could do with it, but it's a bit bricky in your hand. So yeah, you might want to see if you adjust the ratios of that one. It worked out for me so far, but it can be a bit annoying, especially if you go first. Danger Mothman, a card that is neat. It's also dark and it can special summon itself from the hand, but sometimes, just sometimes, you hit a card that you don't want to hit, and that then puts you into a bit of a tricky situation. Some cards actually do stuff in the graveyard, so it's not too bad, but other than that, yeah, can cause for some problems but shouldn't. Time Thief Winder, very good card. You can detach one material from an Xyz monster you can control and special summon it, then it searches a spell trap, because for this card you can actually use both effects in the same turn. There's cards adjuster where you can not do this, which is a bit strange. But yeah, this card is a great extender to go into your second rank 4, and then also searches your disruption. So this is definitely a 3-off in this deck. Sadly, it does not help you again going into your first rank 4, which is a bit problematic from time to time, but it is what it is. Time Thief Bezel ship is kind of, well, it's not the same. It doesn't help you going into your first rank 4 as well, but you can do quite some things with it. You can attach stuff from your opponent's graveyard. It's basically somewhat the same as Flyback, which can also attach a card from your opponent's graveyard, but this card is on board. But you can also, if this card is in the graveyard, detach one material from Xyz monster and special summon it. So there's some plays you can do. You can dump it into the graveyard with Adjuster, for example, so that would work if you need certain extenders. Now, the big playmaker of the game, but also a big troublemaker of the deck, because Like I said, it doesn't work with certain cards because you cannot control any other monsters on board, which is problematic, and this card gets ashed left, right and center, so stuff like Called by the Grave, for example, would be somewhat helpful in this deck actually. Time Thief Regulator can really make or break this deck. This card, if it goes off, you will be set for your turn. If this card doesn't go off, you have absolutely no follow-up because you have nothing on board, nothing that you can special summon, nothing that you can do anymore because your monster's gone, and you cannot put any other monster on board anymore, so you have to solely rely on your traps, like do some work to your next turn where you possibly could start the combo again. If not, yeah, it's a bit annoying, and the second effect doesn't help that much because when it exceeds monster controls to sort by battle while this card's in the grave, it can special summon it. It would be nicer if it was a Time Thief monster for certain situations, but it doesn't really matter all that much. Exceeds monster can help you as well to get it back. One Time Thief Chronocorder. I actually didn't want to run this card at the start. I had different extenders in the deck because this card yet again does nothing by itself, but it works if you run stuff like Startup, and I will talk about this in a second. It's neat because you can actually get it back quite a lot, and it can be very, very annoying for your opponent to deal with. It's not a great card in general though, so if you want to replace it, there's plenty of cards that you could replace it with, but I thought it's a Time Thief deck. Chronocorder isn't terrible, so I might as well run one. Being able to dump it to the graveyard and such isn't too bad. The card that I was talking about where it matters that your monsters are dark is exactly Strangle Lanius. If you control a dark monster, you can special summon this card from your hand, which is great. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except dark monsters. Problematic because besides your Time Thieves, which are all dark monsters, the rest of your lineup is kind of depending on being light monsters. I mean, obviously you have stuff like this and stuff like this who are neat, but other than that, AA-ZEUS is a light monster, the Utopic Draco is a light monster, and so on. Bagooska is an earth monster. There's not that much then you can do with this, but it actually extends your Time Thieves plays, and it kind of gets away with the fact that you cannot be running the Phantom Knights of Shade Brigandine because this card is super rare and makes the deck so much more expensive. And for a budget version, I really wanted to find a way to substitute this. And yes, this is a trap card. I know it's very good for Time Thief Redoer, but you get away with not running it. Obviously, this is a great extender. Very good, run it definitely. You could even run it over stuff like Xyz Reborn, over stuff like Chronocorder and whatnot if you have to have it. But this deck profile I felt like was specifically aimed at people that do not want to craft 3 Shade of Brigandine, because this card otherwise has a very limited pool of usage other than like Zeus, for example, which you can use in basically every Xyz deck. Time Thief Adjuster, very good card, sending cards to the graveyard. And it could special summon itself if you normally special summon a Time Thief monster. See, this card at least special summons itself by being if you special summon some other monster, so that's great. But you can only use one of the effects per turn, which is a bit annoying. This deck would be a lot better if this was 2 effects, but it isn't, so that's something you have to deal with. We will run one Exosister Elis because of the whole combo. You can go into a Kaspitell, then search Elis, then summon Elis, then possibly go into Asophiel if you have one more extender. Then with these 2 Xyz, go into Utopic Future and Utopic Draco. You could technically, if you're playing against an opponent that uses a lot of graveyard stuff, you could just leave this card open and then summon Asophiel during your opponent's turn, so your opponent cannot activate card effects in the graveyard. Well, neither player can, but you don't really care about it at that point. Onwards, but this is mainly like an extender to go to 2 rank 4s for Utopic Draco. It's kind of like searching Kagetokage, but actually being able to use this that turn, so this is a nice combo. Plus Asophiel actually does stuff going second, so it's not completely wasted. One Monster Reborn, just very good extender. Plus, if your Regulator somehow gets ashed, you could get it back from the graveyard, and then if you have Adjuster in your hand, you could still special summon it, so it's not too terrible. A Time Thief Hack, a card that is okay. Xyz monster cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects the turn they are special summoned, which makes this card a lot worse. And your opponent kind of target them with card effects can be quite nice, especially going second possibly. But other than that, the effect that really matters is the one that makes you be able to attack directly. which obviously can help you going into Zeus. So a 2, this card is definitely fine. Also helps you having a spell card in your deck, because your Time Thieves do stuff depending on spell trap cards attached to them, and you can attach the spell card to them from the deck, which is quite nice. So you at least want to run 2 of this. Forbidden Chalice, very good card on first or second. Double or nothing for the OTK. Time Thief startup, you could bump up to 2. You could cut Xyz Reborn for this if you like. You could cut 1 Compulse or something, because you do run a lineup of like 13 Time Thieves, and it can help you save your turn a bit. So having the chance of running 2 of this is quite nice. You still have like a way of searching it, so I felt like 1 was mainly fine, and the effect is, it's okay, especially a Time Thief monster from your hand. Would have been nice if it was hand or graveyard, but then again it would be probably very strong. And then in the grind game, you can attach 3 different Time Thief cards of different types from your graveyard to that monster, which is also not terrible. But that also would help if you would run 3, because then you could like use another startup for that combo and so on. You're not relying on having Time Thief hack in your graveyard, which is sometimes quite hard if you didn't attach it with Flyback beforehand. So yeah, in theory you get away with running a 2 Time Thief startups if you like. Triple Compulse, it's very good to disrupt your opponent, and it's also sometimes helpful for yourself, because you can put extra deck monsters back into your deck, and then could technically get Chronocorder back, because a face-up Xyz monster you control leaves the field by card effect. So if your opponent has only 1 play left and they want to destroy your Xyz monster, you could technically send it back to your extra deck, get a Chronocorder out, and then have the Xyz again, because you don't have a good way of recurring stuff, especially in a budget variant that can be problematic from time to time. So being able to save your monster is something you want to maybe look into if certain conditions as well. So this card had multiple purposes, that's why I decided to run it. Xyz Reborn, a card that I'd usually not touch, but since stuff like Redoer has an effect if you have a trap card attached to it, this card is actually quite neat. And since I already said you only run 1, so being able to recur it is actually not that terrible. Lost Wind, a good card, because even if it's discarded by stuff like Mothman, you can still set it again. It's good in the grind game, stops your opponent from doing crazy stuff. Yeah, that's basically all this card is there for. You could run any kind of other things. You could run any Mirror Force as well if you want. Would kind of work in the deck as well. Dynamiscus is a card that comes to mind. You could be running triple Time Thief Flyback, very good card, can set up your disruptions, can set up other kind of shenanigans, and sadly not in the same turn, but it could also disrupt your opponent's graveyard plays. The 2 Retrograde, you could run 3, but it would be a bit bricky, and a lot of the time you have chances of summoning Time Thief Winder, so you could search it. If you feel like you don't see it enough, you could run a 3 if you like, but only stop spell trap cards, not monsters effects as well, which is a bit annoying. But you can attach the card to Time Thief Xyz monster you control, which isn't too terrible as well. Plus, in theory, you could negate your own trap cards and then attach it to a Time Thief Xyz monster you control if you need the trap card on your Xyz monster, which can be quite fun from time to time. It's not something that comes up, but bear in mind it doesn't have to be a spell trap that your opponent activates, so you could technically attach a trap card like Compulse to your own monster to have that on it. For the extra deck, classic stuff, rank 4 things that you can do. This is a very good combo. The Utopia double stuff is good. Heartlandraco can attack if you yeah, well, directly if you want to go into Zeus. Also, it works with you if you control face-up spell, which you have with Time Thief hack, so it's not actually that terrible in a specific deck. These are just some cheap rank 4s. You could obviously play stuff like Abyss Dweller, Tornado Dragon, all kinds of shenanigans come to mind. You could run 1 Gibrine if you like, if you want to go into this kind of thing and leave Elis open, possibly if you search it out with Kaspitell, and then go during your opponent's turn, go into Gibrine if you like. It's not too bad. Then Gibrine boosts the attack points of your monsters by 800, which can be leading to you finishing the game. So if you have the Exosisters anyway, might want to put 1 of them in for stuff like Rhapsody, for example, because Rhapsody is actually not that necessary in this deck. For the Time Thieves, you run each Time Thief at 1. Perpetua can be nice, sometimes a bit annoying, but can be nice. The main one you want to be going into is Redoer. Redoer is very hard to get off the board and actually can control the game just by itself if you have enough cards around it to support it a little bit. Then other cards that you could be running, ZS Armed Sage is a card, because if you control one level 4 monster, you can special summon from the hand, which is also a good extender. Would also clash with stuff like Time Thief, Regulator, but at least it would still work on other situations. The search effect isn't that important. A card where the search effect could be important is this one. You could special summon it if you control no cards, and then you can add one rank up magic normal spell if you if the card is Xyz summon, which would be hyper rank up magic, which you could use if you go into Utopia monster to summon out Utopia Dragonar, and then can special summon one number monster from your extra deck. But it's also like quite an expensive combo, because you need this card, you need another ultra rare. It's something you could be running instead of this, but then you need a monster that this card special summons, which will also be probably an ultra rare. So in the end, it's a tiny bit more expensive. You could be running Charged Up Heraldry if you like. It's a card that actually extends your plays a bit, or starts your plays, and no matter what you want it to do. You have to run Heraldic Beast, which is a bit annoying. Also, you're locked into Psychics or Machine, but guess what? Time Thieves are Psychic monsters, or technically Machine. You have like the main deck monsters are, some of them are machines, so this is completely fine. So if you want to use this card, you could, but you'd have to splash in some Heraldic Beasts. Other cards to mention, Xyz Import if you have it. Great card to disrupt your opponent if you're playing Xyz kind of deck. It's good going good going first. It's not terrible going second. It equips a monster to your monster, which is very good, especially in Time Thieves. So that's a thing you could be running, and obviously stuff like Forbidden Droplets, Hand Traps, Maxi can be quite nice instead of things like Lost Wind, for example, or the compulsory Evacuation device. Hope you enjoyed the deck profile. That's it. Have a good day.